Welcome to F4S digital events, where we invite successful and inspiring speakers from the business world to tell their career story. In today's event, we explore careers in the digital industry. My name is Kath, and I work to connect teachers and their students with inspirational people from the world of work, so that young people can get a better idea of what type of careers might suit them. I will be hosting this session today. So participants, your audio, video and chat functions have been disabled for safeguarding purposes. If you are submitting questions, can you please click the anonymous button? If we are unable to answer all your questions today, I apologise in advance. We are recording the session and you will be able to watch again on YouTube and share with your friends. So for now, sit back and enjoy the webinar, take some notes and get ready to answer some questions. To ask some questions. So I am delighted to welcome a very inspiring speaker, one who has spoken to many students already, and I'm sure have persuaded them that this is an exciting industry to work in. It's full of innovation and growing all the time. Cameron, thank you for giving up your time today and for agreeing to share your story. Can you start by telling us about your career journey and what you have done since leaving school up until now?
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and thank you so much for the introduction. When I was at school, I actually didn't want to be working in tech. I wanted to be a musician, and I spent a lot of my time doing gigs and various other performances. And I remember that my dad and my brother both work in IT, and I sort of grew up thinking it wasn't really for me. But because it was something that I guess I was growing up around technology, I seemed to be quite good at, I ended up taking computing as one of my subjects. And as I went through the course, I realized I enjoyed it. And although some of the stuff was still a struggle with me, I maybe wasn't quite as technical as some of the other people in my class, I realized that with a bit of hard work and working with the teachers, I was able to sort of get that higher computing. And I guess as I sort of went through this journey in school, I wanted to make sure that, music's a really interesting industry to get into, but I wanted to make sure that I had this fallback position. And I ended up deciding that a sensible thing to do would be to go to university and study computing and try to get a job in what is a very booming tech market. That was the greatest decision I've ever made, because going to university and learning a little bit more about what an IT industry actually looks like was amazing. I guess as I went through the degree and got a little bit of experience from some of the stuff that I studied there, but also from some of the bits of experience that I had working with tech industry, which I'll come on to later on, I realized that the skills that I thought I needed for working in a career in tech weren't actually the skills necessarily that I would have thought before going to university or working in the industry. So it wasn't necessarily about being the most techie person, but there was a number of other sort of soft skills and other parts that really made up a big part of what I do. And when I first took my role within the IT industry, I worked at another company called McDonald, and we started working with the cloud. And the cloud is one of those things that I think many people have heard of, but don't necessarily know what that means. You might have backed up their iPhone to the cloud. All it means is, rather than having all your information and your data and stuff stored in a computer in your office or in your house, you just store it somewhere else on the internet. And being able to do that opens up this world of opportunity for how we can make it more cost effective, how we can scale things up, make it more reliable, and so on. And I realized that I got really interested in doing that. And then I moved to a company called CloudReach, which is where I currently work. And my entire role now revolves around using the cloud to try to cut costs and make sure that it's as optimized as possible. And that's really important, especially in the current world situation. Looking at making sure we keep cost to a minimum on all of our IT infrastructure is super important. So yeah, I guess I've landed myself in a career in this really interesting industry. But actually, when I was growing up, it wasn't an industry I even thought about. And I'm so glad that I'm able to be able to speak about it now and have that experience getting into it. It was really, really interesting to be a part of. So I guess probably one of the things that I want to talk about today is with regards to the skills that we need in the IT industry. And I think this is something that I'm super passionate about. I've spoken a lot in various other events that I've been at for the past couple of years. Skills aren't necessarily the most important, the technical skills aren't necessarily the most important things in working in the tech industry. And actually the tech industry isn't necessarily what you might think it looks like. I know that when I went through school and was, looking at and computing, just as I was starting to consider computing as an option for me, I always thought that it was about who's the best programmer, who's got the best technical skills. But actually working in IT is a lot about communication. A big part of what I do on a day-to-day basis is about understanding what people look for and how we can implement that, and making sure that we're all on the same page. My communication skills are probably the most important part of what I do day to day. And I think, one of the things that people often say is that there's so many different technologies. We can teach individual technologies, or we can teach individual skills about some tool that we use. But one of the most important things that we look for in any individual is somebody who's able to communicate and understand things and listen and speak and be confident in being able to have those conversations. Because at a company like Cloudreach, we deal with lots of different customers, and it can be small customers up to big, large businesses. And being able to manage those relationships with individuals and with the businesses themselves is a really, really important part of what we do. And part of that and building on that is about being, I guess, curious. And actually we have at Cloudreach, we have different values that we sort of adhere to on a daily basis. And one of those values that we have on our website is being curious. And I think the reason that that's so important is because technology every day is changing. And as it changes, new things come up and new technologies appear, and we need to understand how these things work to be able to use them properly. And part of that is being able to be curious about learning them, about getting to grips with them, about understanding how they work. And I think that as I've gone through my career, one of the key things has been my passion for learning new technologies. And my passion for trying to throw myself out there and be curious about other parts that aren't just technical. So one of those things is about public speaking. And I know that when I went to school, I hope they still do it, but they do you have your talk part, your oral part of English and other languages as well. And I always found that probably the most challenging part of any assessment at school. I really wasn't comfortable with public speaking. I wasn't comfortable presenting ideas to other people. I was never comfortable if somebody asked me to read something in class or to do a presentation on a particular topic, whether it be geography, music, whatever. I really found that difficult. And it's incredible that now I look at where I am in my career, and one of the most important things that I do is those presentation skills, because we spend a lot of time on calls with customers, and actually, just like we are today, able to present through the internet, through a video call, we do a lot of this on a daily basis with our customers, and it's a really great way to make the world a smaller place. And being able to be confident on those calls and convey your ideas, and also know when to say yes, no, maybe, and sort of put new ideas rather than just agreeing with things, or to suggest something that you think might work really well, and have that confidence to deliver that. That's a really key part that goes well beyond just the technical skills. And sure, of course, working in IT does mean that some of my time is spent coding, and it's not, I think one of the preconceptions people have about IT is that people kind of come into the office, they code away all day, and then they go home and it's sort of do that every day. And whilst coding is still a part of it, it's quite a sort of social thing. So one example of that is that I recently, this week, started coding some stuff for a project that I'm working on. And I have another colleague who normally spends some time in the office with, but because we're all working from home, we had to find a way to sort of pair program, if you like, whilst not being in the same place. And we used a new tool which allowed us to effectively code from the same document at the same time and see what each other are doing whilst we're on a video call, and we can able to see each other and we can hear each other. And we spend a lot of that time sort of going back and forth about ideas, and a lot of it is problem solving. And actually, I think when you do subjects like any of the sciences, maths, computing, one of the things that really gets mentioned a lot is this idea of problem solving. And it's a really, really important skill to have. It's also, it's one of those things that can be developed quite quickly. And it's, I know that when I was at school, my problem solving skills weren't great. I definitely found myself feeling more creative, and creativity is something that I'm going to come back to shortly. But I didn't feel that I had that sort of logical brain, if you like. I was definitely more on the creative side. And actually, it's funny because the more I got practice in and the more that I've worked, the more comfortable I've become with problem solving. And now it becomes a really exciting part of the day. You know, you get given a problem and you say, how do we fix this? And before any lines of code are typed, we spend a lot of time going back and forth and communicating and brainstorming and working out how we're going to address that problem before we even start coding anything. So just as important as being able to code or any technical side is that communication, that understanding, that collaboration, that presentation skill, all of those things kind of tying together. And I wanted to talk about creativity because, you know, I grew up wanting to be a musician. I did live music performances. I always felt that, you know, the world of the arts was more for me rather than the world of technology. And then I look at what I do every day, and it's something that I think sometimes gets lost when people talk about computing, is that computing is actually not just quite a technical role, but it's also something that has great creativity, because ultimately what I do on a daily basis is come up with those solutions, whether it be brainstorming with other people or having ideas. And actually, I'm really fortunate to work in a company like CloudReach, where I can kind of come up with ideas, and often the business says, well, actually, that's a really good idea. Let's see how we can go ahead and try to implement that for the business. And again, that's sort of tying all of these things together, having the confidence to be able to convey that to people that can influence whether or not that happens. But actually, the whole process of coming up with an idea and then brainstorming with or without somebody else how we might tackle that idea, and then developing that idea into something that we can actually use, be it a computer program or some tool of some sort, that's quite a creative process. And actually, that's where being creative ties really nicely into what it's like to work in the world of IT just now. And I think, you know, digital skills are a really important thing. And it doesn't just have to be a role in tech. There are lots of other roles that use digital skills just now. But it's really important to remember that whilst digital skills are a great part of the direction that the world is going with this increasingly digital technological world, another really important side of that is that soft skill side. So that is your creativity, your communication, your understanding, your sort of behavioral skills, if you like. And that's certainly been something that has made my life a whole lot easier. It's completely reinvented how I felt about the world of technology. And I'm really excited about working in this tech industry, particularly in Scotland, because, you know, Scotland and Edinburgh is one area which is booming as a tech market. And we're seeing lots and lots of roles becoming available. It's actually the second highest in demand tech market in the UK, other than London. We have an absolute, you know, plethora of tons of different opportunities within this tech market. And we have a problem just now where there are declines in people taking computing. And I think, and I say this as somebody who went through the computing modules at school, I think that's because sometimes what we see as computing isn't actually the way the world works, which is why I'm so passionate and excited about being able to tell my story and talk a little bit about what that's like. I also want to talk a little bit about, because it's something that I always like to slide in, computing companies and technology companies. The environment is quite flexible, and it's definitely becoming more like a standard nowadays. So CloudReach is a company where we have uncapped paid holidays. We have ability to work from home throughout the year. We have complete understanding when people want to take a break. So we have, you know, a games room in the office where we can just take 5 minutes out of our day and clear our head. And I think it's really important when, you know, things get overwhelming, and you will sometimes have found when you're studying for exams or for tests that you end up, you know, studying perhaps for an hour or 2 hours, and then by the end of that time you're starting to go, oh, I'm reading all these things but nothing's really going in. And for me, I think that is something that happens all the way through life, and the longer you spend in these things, you'll find that you sort of start to fade away. And you'll have heard your teachers talk about taking 5 minutes away, you know, go play with your dog, or go out into the garden, or go stretch your legs, get yourself a glass of juice, go play a game and come back. That's totally fine. And it's exactly the same thing in the world of work. You know, we're not machines. We can't just sit for 10 hours at a day typing away. And, you know, especially when what you're doing is quite challenging, because you're having to do these problem solving tasks, you're having to, you know, come up with the creative ideas that you're coming up with. And that can be, you know, quite a lot of work in a day. And making sure that you take regular breaks away from that is really important. And one of the biggest skills is recognizing when that time comes. It's about time management. And time management doesn't just mean I need to do this, this, and this, so I'm only going to work on those things. It's about saying, I need to do this, this, and this, but I also need to afford some time for me to recharge my batteries, to get my brain from one thing to the next. And that's something that is really, really allowed and completely understood in the world of technology. And a lot of companies you'll see, like Google and Facebook and CloudReach and so on, that's the way the office environment and the culture at the companies is going. And it's sort of slightly ahead of the curve from other industries. So not only is it an industry where it's not just about how technical you are and how good you are at coding, there's always soft skill sides to it, but it's also an industry that is really flexible and understanding about how you work. And if you think that you work better working from home, or if you think you work better taking a quick break in the middle of your morning just to get your head away and come back, that's absolutely fine. The most important thing in computing is making sure that you manage your time and that you can communicate when you're doing that, how you're doing it, what you're working on. And it's, I guess, for me, all of these skills are not the skills that I thought you need for computing when I was at school. And it's really important to notice how they all tie together. And, you know, how for somebody like myself who grew up wanting to be a musician, thinking that creativity was the thing that I needed to be doing and that computing wasn't that for me. And now I'm very, very happy doing a creative role within computing. You know, there's a lot of sort of overlap between all of these skills, and I've been really, really lucky that I'm able to be in the position that I'm in at CloudReach, and to be in the position of working on a role where I'm getting to be creative. I'm getting to use all of these soft skills all together. So yeah, sorry, I know I've spoken quite a bit there about my backstory and how I got into it, but it's something that I'm super passionate about, and I know that I do a lot of presentations about how soft skills matter just as much as these technical skills in the world of tech and digital industries.
I think that is really what we were after today, Cameron, somebody to give a bit of background on how they got there and how they arrived at the decision to go there. So we do have a fair number of questions coming in. So the first one, you've spoken about your music a lot and about how that's what you wanted to be, and we can see the guitars in the background. So someone is saying, do you think your music skills have helped with your presentation skills, so going out and performing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I've done, in terms of music performance, I've done everything from sort of small venues like restaurants up to, I was really lucky in 2013, I got the chance to go play a music festival in Prague, and there were several thousand people there. And, you know, as somebody, as I said, that went to school and couldn't even do presentations in front of a class, that was a horribly terrifying, you know, new situation to be in. And the more that I've performed and been on stage where it's just me and my guitar and singing, has definitely given me the confidence when I'm now speaking in meetings and stuff, because, you know, I kind of am of the opinion that if you can get up on a stage and express yourself with music or performing, whether it be dance or whether it be stage performance, you know, these sort of creative arts, then I'm able to handle myself in a conversation with somebody. Because, you know, these presentations, they might seem quite daunting. They might, you know, talking to different people or people who you might see as, you know, important people or businesses or, you know, any of that sort of stuff. I used to be really worried about it, but the more I've played music, the more confident I've become as an individual, and it's definitely fed into how confident I feel in sort of my day-to-day work and how I present these ideas to people. So yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of help from my music and where I am today and how confident I am.
Okay, someone else had asked earlier, what are some tips for public speaking? Do you have anything else then other than the music side of things? Because obviously not everybody can get on a stage and perform.
Of course. So the more I've done public speaking, I realized that the best thing to do is to practice what you're going to say. Now, for different people, that'll mean different things. Some people prefer to write those things out and sort of really basically rehearse exactly what you're going to say. Some people prefer to put things down on bullet points and go, these are the topics that I want to cover, and then you're happy to sort of just speak around those things now that you know it. A really useful tip, and I know it sounds silly, and a lot of people have suggested it before. I remember somebody spoke to me when I was at school and said, if you're struggling with presentations, find a mirror and do your presentation as you would to whoever it is you're going to be doing it to, but in front of a mirror. And it sounds silly, but actually it's really useful because you can see how you are actually looking. You can see how your body language is. if you're sitting there speaking like this, you know, it becomes more obvious to you. So it's about trying to build yourself up and be confident. And if you end up in a situation where you're confident standing in front of a mirror, you feel more relaxed in that, then when you're doing the presentation, you can almost imagine that you're doing the same thing again. It's a lot easier on a video call, I think, sometimes, because you're not necessarily on front of that person, so you maybe don't always see the same individual. But in a room full of people, I've tried to make sure that I don't lock on eye contact with one individual, but rather try to scan the room. And if you find that difficult at start, the easiest thing to do is not actually necessarily look at people, but look just beyond people. And that will give your audience the impression that you're looking right at them. But it slowly builds that confidence in looking around the room, being more aware of your body language. I think those are the sort of two things, you know, getting used to eye contact, but actually practicing in front of a mirror so that you can see how your body language looks. Because a large part of presenting isn't necessarily what you say. I mean, I've stumbled already a couple of times in what I've presented to you today, but I'm not thinking about it because my body language isn't suggesting, oh, I'm terrified by that. So I guess practice makes perfect in that sense. But yeah, it definitely helped being able to sort of run through things before.
Okay. Another question about your company, and you described the office that you were in and what your company, the attitude that they have to everybody's work. So somebody's saying, do you think the laid back attitude improves employees' mental health?
Yeah, and actually I'm so glad somebody's brought that up, because one of the things that I do, and I've just done earlier on today, is be part of a mental health discussion in work, and particularly because of the current situation. And it absolutely does. I think, you know, for a lot of tech companies, and Cloudreach is included in this, the most conducive environment to, you know, productivity and people getting stuff done is when those employees are happy, and when those employees are sort of well looked after. And I know that, you know, I've never really had a moment where I've felt I couldn't escape the work. You know, I'm able to take holiday, I'm able to sort of take a break, I'm able to, you know, take 5 minutes out of my day. And it makes a huge improvement to how I feel mentally at work, and how I overcome, you know, sort of, because, you know, not everything's super easy. Sometimes things can drag on for a bit and maybe be more difficult than you originally thought. And finding a way to manage that is really important. So yeah, I think exactly that. Being able to be flexible about how we work is absolutely, you know, a big boost for mental health in the workplace. And it's an important discussion to have that as well. And you know, it's something that Cloudreach we've been a part of for quite a while, and it's a discussion that should always happen.
Another question, do you think there is a gender imbalance in computing? And if so, why?
I do. I'm also very passionate on this. I had a heartbreaking moment at a primary school delivering a presentation where I was talking about my world of work. And a young girl asked the question whether or not girls could work at Cloudreach. And I remember the impact that had on me, because at some point, somewhere in this young person's life, they had got this idea that this wasn't a role for girls. Cloudreach do a great deal of equal opportunity work. So we actually host the Edinburgh Women in Tech meetings. And I do think things are improving for the better, but there's still an issue, and it's something that needs addressed. I hope, you know, I really do hope when I do presentations and talk about the world of work that everybody looks at it with that equal opportunity and thinks if it's something that they're interested in, that it's something that they'll look to explore. And I would absolutely emphasize that this is a role for anybody, and that this imbalance, you know, it's something that needs stomped out.
Good. Okay. Okay, somebody has said, I'm not very good at computing, but I want to work with computers. Can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, one of the things that's important is to try not to pocket yourself into this category of not very good at computing, because there's lots of parts to computing. And I know that programming for a while certainly wasn't something I was particularly strong at, but I was good at other parts of computing. I was good at understanding databases, I was good at understanding networks, but I wasn't good at programming. And you know, all of those skills are something that can be worked on, and there's so many different parts to computing, and it's about finding the part that you're most interested in. For me, the move to the cloud is one of the biggest and most important parts of the sort of technology revolution that we're going through right now. And I am truly fascinated by the cloud. I think it's really cool. I think it's really important because it allows businesses to work in ways that, you know, we just couldn't before. For example, all schools just now, if they weren't using the cloud, you couldn't do home learning. You couldn't all be connected in the same way that you are. So it's a really, really important tool. But, you know, I couldn't see myself now. I used to work as a hardcore software engineer, and that was something that I quite enjoyed, but I found definitely more challenging in different ways from the challenges that I face today. And I moved into this sort of more cloud engineer role, and I found that, you know, this is the particular field that works for me. So, you know, I know you might feel that there's a part of computing that you're maybe not so comfortable with, but you know, it's about finding that part of computing that really works for you, because there's lots of different areas, whether it be to do with data, whether it be to do with databases, networks, to do with the internet, to do with the cloud, to do with software engineering, to do with marketing and digital marketing. There's lots of different areas within, you know, the world of IT, if you like, and digital skills. So, you know, have a look at different areas within it. And I think I don't know if my contact details will be available after this. I'm happy for my work email to be made available. But if anyone has any requests in terms of, you know, like resources to look into different fields, that, you know, I'm more than happy to sort of share that with yourselves.
Okay, well, one question on that then. Does your company employ students?
It does. So we are fairly open in terms of the different paths that people take. You know I spoke about I went off to university. I ended up doing an undergraduate and a postgraduate degree in computing. We have people who have come straight from school who work at the company. We have had intern placements for people at colleges, people at schools, people at university level. We're quite, you know, flexible about what kind of individuals. Ultimately, it's about, you know, how employable that individual is, rather than necessarily the route they've taken into wanting to work in computing. And we actually had last summer there, we had an intern in who was a 5th going into 6th year student, and she worked for the summer in CloudReach as part of our finance team. And she was a brilliant addition to the team. She was treated just like any other member of the team is. It's important to stress that if you do work as a student placement, you are as valued a member of staff as any other individual. But yes, yeah, we do these sort of placements for students, whether they be university or school. So.
Okay, and then the intern you were talking about, how did they get the job? Was it a personal contact, or did they just write into CloudReach, or how would someone?
So somebody in the company was a mentor to them through one of the sort of platforms available through Skills Development Scotland. But, you know, again, these are the sort of things that I think further down the line, or certainly previously, we've advertised for various roles when those roles become available. And also, you know, more than happy to have people write. And if there's a role available, obviously it's something that, you know, we'd be happy to accommodate, assuming that the company can accommodate it at that time. But yeah, there's lots of different ways. And I think probably the most important thing would be to reach out and use, you know, we're trying to partner more and more. I know we've done a bit of work with Founders for Schools in terms of trying to partner between CloudReach and these organisations, and the hope is that we can sort of find an easy way to facilitate that, bridging that gap between the student who's looking for something and CloudReach. So perhaps that's something we should look into more.
Okay, well, we have the next question is quite topical, and it will need to be the last one as well, but there's a lot of things that we can wrap up into it. So someone has asked how coronavirus has changed your work just now, and we've talked about how innovative the industry is. So what does the future hold for the workplace, given all the possibilities that the digital industry provides?
Sure. So it's a great question, and I think absolutely, you know, coronavirus has changed a lot of the ways people work in different companies. From CloudReach's point of view, nothing has really changed other than that we're not in the office, because everything that we did was in the cloud. So, and we could all work from home anyway. So nothing material has really changed other than that human interaction has been lost. So, you know, we definitely do a lot of video calls now to make sure that we're checking in on the team, that everyone's sort of there. We have a tool called Slack, which people can, it's a bit like a Facebook Messenger type idea, where you can just ping somebody and ask questions and jump on a call if you need to, and screen share and so on. I think what it means going forward, we'll probably see a lot more uptake in people working from home. And I think that actually is a good thing. You know, working from home is something that I've done for years. It's been a really, really good thing. It means you don't have a morning commute, when you finish work, you're already home, so you have more time to see friends, family, to do exercise, to get out and about, you know, and have that sort of work-life balance that people talk about. But I think the main thing is going to be how people use technology to stay connected in a sort of increasingly disconnected world, certainly just now. And technology is an important part in that. Cloudreach do a lot of work just now in terms of making sure people have the technologies to stay connected. And I spoke about being peer programming with somebody, you know, through the internet, and all of these things sort of will become more normal. And whilst, you know, eventually we might see offices reopen and so on, I think there's, even beyond that, there's going to be a lot more people using technologies that are available to us, particularly actually in the cloud, to keep everybody connected and active. So I think that whilst it's all uncertain times just now, I think longer term we'll see a lot of benefits from the way people are changing how they work.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for everything today. I'm sure you will have convinced more students that this is a great career for them to have. I also want to thank all the students at home for joining in and for the great questions you asked. Students, you will be emailed a feedback survey. If you can complete this, it would really help so that we can continue to improve our digital services. You should also look out for the recordings on the YouTube channel, Founders for School, and if you aren't already following us, please do so on Twitter and Instagram, and you can share the videos with friends and family. Our next sessions, we have sessions every day next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. So if you can tune in at 11:30 and 2 p.m, most days we will have some kind of career talk going on, and we hope to see you there. Okay, thanks again, Cameron.
Thank you very much.
Bye.